Let's talk about the quiet, culturally endorsed habits that keep women small, not because they aren't powerful, but because they've been taught to be palatable. These habits are insidious. They dress themselves up as politeness, productivity, humility, even kindness. But what they really are, they're cages, beautifully decorated, gold-plated cages. And let me be clear, this is not a call to hustle harder. It's a call to wake up, to reclaim, to rise. Let's dig in. Somewhere along the way, women were taught, sometimes outright, more often through whispers and raised eyebrows, that their presence is too much, too loud, too emotional, too opinionated, too ambitious, too everything. So we learned to apologize. Not just when we made a mistake, but when we simply existed. We started folding ourselves into origami versions of ourselves, pleasing, quiet, small. Because we believed that was the cost of acceptance, of belonging. The truth is, we've been socialized to believe that it's polite to apologize, that it's kind, that it makes us more likable, more approachable, more easy to work with. But here's the catch. It's not just about manners. It's about identity. And the more we apologize for existing, the more we erode our sense of self. The more we say, "He's sorry" for having an idea, a need, or an opinion, the more we reinforce the lie that we are inherently inconvenient. You bump into a table and whisper, "Sorry." Someone else cuts you off in a meeting and you reply, "Sorry, go ahead." You take a deep breath before making a request and feel compelled to pad it with an apology. Why? Because somewhere deep in your body, in your wiring, in your memory, you've internalized the belief that your presence, your asking, your needing, your existing is a disruption. Let me tell you something right now. Your presence is not a disruption. Your presence is powerful, and the world needs women who show up without shrinking. Women who take up space without apologizing for every square inch of it. We don't need more women who contort themselves into the smallest versions of who they are to avoid being a too much bigger. We need women who are bold enough to be seen fully and unapologetically. This isn't just a personal issue. It's a systemic one. We don't wake up one morning and decide to apologize for our very existence. No, this is conditioned behavior. We grow up hearing a be nice, a don't be bossy, a smile more, a don't make a scene, and we learn that being accepted means being agreeable. Being liked means being less. And over time, that pressure forms habits that look like politeness on the surface, but are really rooted in fear. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of being labeled difficult, dramatic, or emotional. And here's where it gets real. Every time you say a sorry for something that doesn't require an apology, you reinforce the message to yourself and to others that your needs are secondary, that your presence requires permission, that you don't deserve to take up space without a disclaimer. That's not humility. That's self-silencing. There is a massive difference between being kind and being apologetic. Kindness is rooted in compassion and connection. Apologizing for your existence is rooted in shame and self-doubt. When we confuse the two, we rob ourselves of authenticity. and of grounded confidence, of the ability to show up in the fullness of who we are. And let me be really clear. You can be kind and clear. You can be generous and grounded. You can speak with authority and still lead with empathy. In fact, that's where real leadership begins. And so I want to invite you to notice, not to judge yourself, not to shame yourself, but to simply notice. Pay attention to how often sorry slips out of your mouth when what you really mean is excuse me, or a thank you, or nothing at all. Pay attention to the moments when you shrink, not because you're small, but because you've been taught that shrinking is safer than standing tall. Pay attention to how your body feels when you apologize before expressing a thought, a need, or a boundary. Does it feel honest? Or does it feel like you're trading truth for approval? This isn't about never saying sorry. It's about reserving your apologies for the moments that truly call for them. When you've hurt someone, when you've made a mistake, when accountability is needed, yes, absolutely apologize. But don't use a sorry as a placeholder for your worth. Don't use it to soften your impact or to shrink your light. You don't need to apologize for being here. You don't need to apologize for being human. You don't need to apologize for being whole. We've been taught to second-guess our own voices before we even open our mouths. It's subtle, but it's everywhere. The disclaimers, the hesitations, the little preambles that sound like, I'm probably wrong, but, or this might sound silly. That moment where you brace yourself for someone to roll their eyes or interrupt. You feel it in your chest, that quick contraction, that flicker of doubt. And so you soften your language, you edit yourself in real time, and before the words even leave your lips, they've already been watered down. This isn't about being unsure of what you're saying. It's about being unsure if you're allowed to say it in the way you mean it. There's a difference. Because the truth is, most of the time, you do know what you're talking about. You've done the work. You've lived the experience. You've carried the wisdom in your bones for years. But when you walk into rooms that don't mirror you, rooms that weren't built with you in mind, you start performing a version of yourself that's easier to digest. Smaller, softer, less certain. Let's call that what it is. Protection. Speaking up fully with conviction requires vulnerability. It invites judgment, and judgment, especially for women, especially in public or professional spaces, carries real consequences. You know what happens. You're called intense, aggressive, too direct. Meanwhile, someone else says the exact same thing with half the insight, and they're called bold, assertive. You've mistaken humility for self-doubt. Defend its value. There's also the myth of it that's big. There's also the myth of being humble that gets tangled up in this. We've mistaken humility for self-doubt. But humility doesn't mean minimizing yourself. It means being grounded in your truth without needing to dominate. It means owning your story, your knowledge, and your instincts without shouting or shrinking. There is quiet power in speaking clearly. There is deep confidence in not needing to hedge your every sentence. When you shrink your voice, you're not just dimming your impact, you're cutting off connection. Because connection isn't built through perfection. It's built through presence. The kind of presence that says, I'm here, I have something to say, and I trust it's worth saying. That kind of presence is magnetic. It's real. And it gives other women permission to do the same. Do the same. You've felt that before. When someone speaks with clarity and calm power, and you sit up a little straighter just listening. That's not ego, that's embodiment. And here's the part that's often missed. The more you shrink your voice, the less you trust it. You create a feedback loop of internal mistrust. You start outsourcing your truth to other people's reactions. You look around the room before you speak. You scan for nods, for approval, for confirmation that it's okay to say what you already know to be true. That habit is so ingrained. We often don't even realize we're doing it, but our bodies know. Our nervous systems know. Every time we swallow a thought that matters, every time we minimize an insight to sound more likable, we teach ourselves that safety is more important than authenticity. But what if we flipped the script? What if the new habit wasn't shrinking, but standing, grounded, steady, and clear? What if we stopped asking for permission to be wise and just were? What if we practiced speaking from our core instead of our conditioning? This doesn't mean being loud for the sake of being loud. It means letting go of the belief that your voice needs to be diluted to be heard. It doesn't. It needs to be real. So the next time you feel that urge to preface your brilliance with a disclaimer, pause, notice it, catch it in the act, then choose something different and choose something different. Replace not sure, but with a here's what I think. Replace a this might sound dumb with a here's an idea. Not because you need to sound confident, but because you already are. And your voice, it doesn't need a permission slip. It just needs to be claimed. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from doing everything for everyone and pretending it's fine. You know the kind. It's the tired that sleep can't fix. The kind of burnout that settles into your bones, not because your schedule is full, but because your soul is starving. Starving. And yet you keep going. You plan the meetings, manage the house, remember everyone's birthdays, carry emotional weight no one sees, and you do it all with a smile, because somewhere along the way, you were taught that this is what it means to be strong. Raw. Overfunctioning is when we do more than is ours to do, not out of joy or purpose, but out of fear. Fear of letting someone down. Fear of not being needed. Fear of what might happen if we stop being the one holding it all together. It's a survival strategy that looks like competence on the outside, but often hides a deep anxiety about worth. We convince ourselves that being irreplaceable means being invaluable. But being needed and being valued are not the same thing. And constantly needing to be needed is not sustainable. It's a form of self-erasure. What makes this habit so tricky is that it's rewarded. Overfunctioning women get praised. We get called reliable, capable, dedicated. We are seen as the glue, the backbone, the ones who can be counted on, But here's the truth. When the only way to be respected is to overextend, that's not respect, that's exploitation. It's a system that benefits from your burnout while telling you how lucky it is to have you. And you, and you. You're so used to being applauded for your performance that you forget it's not your job to do everything. Overfunctioning can be deeply connected to how we learn to survive emotional chaos. For some of us, it started early when caretaking was the only way to feel safe or valuable. When being hyper-responsible was the trade-off for love or stability. And so we grew up believing that if we just worked a little harder, stayed a little more organized, said yes a little more often, we could control the outcome. We could keep Bill happy. We could avoid abandonment. That's not a personality trait. That's a trauma response wearing a productivity badge. The price of this habit is high. When you do everything, you leave no space for others to step up. You train the people around you to expect your functioning as normal. And the longer you carry more than your share, the more invisible your exhaustion becomes. People stop asking if you're okay because you've taught them you don't need help. But just because you can do it all doesn't mean you should. Capability without boundaries is a fast track to resentment. There is power in saying, I'm not available for that. There is strength in asking, can you take this on? There is deep healing in pausing before you automatically offer, volunteer, or agree. And the thing is, people might be uncomfortable when you start doing less. They may push back. They may question it. That's okay. Their discomfort isn't your cue to resume overfunctioning. It's a sign that something is shifting, and that's growth. Growth is rarely comfortable, but it is always worth it. You are not holding the world together by yourself. It only feels that way because you've been doing too much for too long. Letting go of overfunctioning isn't weakness. It's not selfish. It's not failure. It's choosing to live with intention instead of from exhaustion. It's giving yourself permission to trust that who you are is enough, even when you're not fixing, managing, or producing. It's stepping back into your humanity because you were never meant to be a machine. You were meant to be a whole person. You don't have to look very far to see how much women are encouraged to avoid conflict. From the time we're little girls, we're rewarded for being agreeable, for being nice, for keeping the peace. We learn to smooth things over, to swallow hard truths, to make everyone else comfortable, even if it costs us our own comfort. And it becomes second nature. You feel that heat in your chest, that tightening in your gut when something doesn't sit right. But instead of speaking up, you smile. You nod. You let it go. Because somewhere along the way, you decided that staying liked was safer than being honest. Avoiding conflict might feel like protection, but what it really becomes is self-abandonment. You think you're maintaining harmony, but all you're doing is delaying a conversation that's already happening inside your body. That's the thing about unspoken truth. It doesn't go away. It builds, it simmers, and eventually, it builds. It erupts. Sometimes it shows up as resentment, sometimes as anxiety, sometimes as exhaustion that you can't explain. You're carrying the emotional weight of what you didn't say. And that weight gets heavy. It's not just about being afraid to confront others. It's about the deep-rooted belief that our needs are less important than someone else's comfort. That if we express anger or disappointment, we'll be seen as dramatic, difficult, or ungrateful.
And
We rationalize.
and
We stay silent to protect relationships that may not even be protecting us in return. And in doing that, we silence the part of ourselves that's trying to advocate for us. We push that voice down so far that we start to believe it doesn't even exist anymore. But conflict isn't inherently bad. It's just a moment where two truths meet. It's a reckoning, a point of clarity. Conflict can be a bridge when approached with respect and groundedness, but only if we allow it to surface. Avoiding it doesn't make it disappear. It just buries the tension deeper into our bodies, our relationships, our lives. And, over time, avoiding conflict doesn't just fracture connection with others. It fractures our connection with ourselves because we start to mistrust our instincts. We question our right to feel what we feel. What if you trusted that your voice matters enough to be heard, even when it shakes? What if you believed that your truth deserves to be named, even when it makes others uncomfortable? Speaking up doesn't always mean confrontation. It can mean clarity. It can mean setting boundaries. It can mean saying, that doesn't work for me, without offering 1,000 justifications. It's not about being loud or aggressive. It's about being rooted in your own worth. It's about choosing discomfort over resentment. Because unexpressed truth always finds its way out, too often in ways that cost us more than a hard conversation ever would. The habit of avoiding conflict isn't about peace, it's about fear. And fear is a terrible foundation for any relationship, including the one you have with yourself. Reclaiming your voice, especially in moments of tension, is one of the most powerful acts of self-respect you can practice. It won't always feel good in the moment. Your heart might race, your hands might shake. That's okay. That's just your body remembering how to speak up again. Let it. Let your truth be louder than your fear, even if it's just by a whisper. Perfectionism is a slow and silent thief. It doesn't barge into your life loudly. It slips in quietly, disguised as excellence, disguised as ambition, disguised as a doing your best. But the truth is, perfectionism isn't about healthy striving. It's about fear. It's the voice that says, if I look perfect, work perfectly, live perfectly, then I can avoid shame, judgment, and blame. And let's be honest, that's a heavy burden to carry every single day. Especially for women who are constantly walking the tightrope between being told they're not enough and being told they're too much. When you're a perfectionist, nothing ever feels quite good enough. Not your work, not your appearance, not your work, not your parenting, not your body, not your relationships. There's always a little voice whispering, you could have done that better. And no matter how much you achieve, how much you give, how much you fix or polish or please, the goalposts keep moving. That's the trap. Perfectionism is a never-ending hustle for worthiness. And the currency is exhaustion. You don't just strive for excellence. You grind yourself into dust, trying to earn approval that you should never have had to earn in the first place. This habit is so deeply ingrained in us, we often wear it like armor. We say things like, I just have high standards, or I'm just detail, or I'm just detail-oriented. And while there's nothing wrong with taking pride in your work, there's a huge difference between striving from a place of self-respect and striving from a place of fear. Perfectionism is fear dressed up in gold stars. It's not about growth. It's about proving. It's about proving. And proving is a dangerous game because the moment you need to prove your worth, you've already believed the lie that it's in question. One of the most heartbreaking things about perfectionism is how much it steals from our lives without us even noticing. It steals creativity because we're afraid of doing it wrong. It steals joy because we're too busy critiquing ourselves to feel proud. It steals connection because we don't let people see the real, messy, unfinished parts of us. And worst of all, it steals rest. Because when your worth is tied to your performance, how can you ever stop? There's always more to fix, more to improve, more to perfect. And eventually, you forget what it feels like to just be. What if being worthy didn't depend on being flawless? What if you believed that who you are as you are is enough? Not after you lose 10 pounds, not after you clean the kitchen, not after you land the promotion, or write the perfect email, but right now. What would change in your life if you allowed yourself to be seen in all your humanness instead of hiding behind the mask of perfection? Vulnerability isn't the enemy of excellence. It's the birthplace of it. Because when you stop performing and start showing up as your full self, that's when your real power kicks in. Letting go of perfectionism doesn't mean letting go of standards or effort. It means letting go of shame. It means trading the pressure to be flawless for the courage to be authentic. And yes, it's scary. Yes, it feels uncomfortable. But freedom often lives on the other side of discomfort. The more we embrace imperfection, the more we make space for real joy, real love, and real connection. Because people don't connect to our masks, they connect to our truth and your truth. It doesn't need polishing, it just needs permission. There is a quiet, invisible habit that keeps so many women stuck, and it's the chronic need for external validation. The need to be seen, approved of, liked, praised. It doesn't always look desperate or obvious. It often wears the face of being helpful, being accommodating, being impressive. You show up, you give more than what's asked. You make sure everyone's taken care of, and you wait. Wait for the thank you, the smile, the nod. The nod, the sign that says, yes, you're enough. But that kind of approval, it's fleeting. And it starts with one decision. I am done playing small. And